In this video, we are going to discuss global internet access. The internet may have started small as ARPANET, but by 1983 we can mark the birth of the internet. By 2000, almost half of Americans were on the internet, but ordinary people in most other countries had not yet joined the network. There were fewer than 400 million internet users worldwide. Since then, the internet has gone from an American network to a truly global one. Today, there are more than 3 billion internet users, and hundreds of millions of new users are joining each year. There are two basic ways people can log onto the internet: through a fixed broadband connection at home or in an office, and via a wireless connection on a cell phone or tablet. This data from the International Telecommunications Union shows how popular fixed internet access is around the world. It shows internet access is widespread in most parts of the world, but is still fairly scarce in much of sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East. Fixed internet access allows multiple devices in a customer's home to access the internet. Fixed connections are also ideal for streaming video services, such as Netflix, because they tend to have greater capacity than wireless networks. In the developed world, people usually got fixed internet access first and obtained mobile internet devices later. But some developing countries are skipping the construction of fixed broadband networks altogether. This is cost-effective because a single cell phone tower can provide service to hundreds of customers. For example, 2.7% of Egyptians have fixed broadband service at home, but 10 times as many Egyptians have internet access using a cell phone. The story is similar in Ghana, Uzbekistan, Indonesia, South Africa, and Nigeria. Mobile internet access can have profound implications for people in isolated areas. Farmers can use mobile phones to learn about recent market developments, increasing the amount they can get for their crops. Some mobile phone operators also offer sophisticated payment capabilities, allowing people who don't have access to the conventional banking system to make electronic payments. A few wealthy countries, including Japan, South Korea, and Sweden, have more mobile internet subscriptions than people. In some countries, internet access can be easily disrupted because fiber optic cables are relatively fragile. In 2008, 2 fiber optic cables that connect Middle Eastern countries to India were cut, leading to disruptions for many internet users in Egypt and India. Some press reports suggested that the damage was caused by a ship's anchor being dragged along the bottom of the Mediterranean, but the Egyptian authorities have said no ships were in the area at the time the cables were damaged. The exact cause of the outage remains a mystery. Sometimes internet access is disrupted due to accidents. In other cases, it's deliberate government policy. For example, during the 2011 protests in Egypt, the government cut off Egypt's connections to the rest of the internet. This was possible because Egypt's links to the outside world were controlled by a handful of large companies. This map shows which countries have few enough links to the outside world to be at risk of this type of censorship. Some countries, such as the United States, have dozens of links to the outside world, making a coordinated shutdown of the U.S. internet almost impossible. Others have many fewer links and are correspondingly more vulnerable to censorship. In most Western countries, the internet is a free speech zone where ordinary people can express themselves without fear of censorship. But that's not true everywhere. This map from Freedom House details which countries respect freedom of speech and which countries flout it. Cuba and several countries in Southeast Asia and the Middle East engage in pervasive censorship and are marked in purple. China, for example, has a great firewall that makes it difficult for its citizens to read about sensitive topics, such as the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre. Other countries have a partially free internet. In Russia, for example, the government has engaged in more aggressive internet censorship since Vladimir Putin returned to power in 2012. The social media sites Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter are frequent targets for censorship. This map from Mother Jones shows which countries restrict their users from accessing these sites. China doesn't just block access to Western social media sites, it has also cultivated homegrown alternatives that are under the thumb of Chinese authorities. These social media sites enable users to engage in relatively unfettered discussion, but the providers are required to participate in an elaborate monitoring and censorship regime to ensure that sensitive topics do not receive widespread discussion. But let's be sure we also take a closer look at the United States. This map shows what percentage of American homes had broadband internet access in 2011. Broadband penetration in the U.S. is heavily linked to geography. The West, Northeast, and Upper Midwest have the highest broadband adoption, while high-speed internet access is less common in the South. But broadband isn't available everywhere. At the end of 2011, there were still significant parts of the country where fixed broadband service wasn't offered. Satellite internet service is available almost everywhere in the United States, but it tends to be a lot more expensive than fixed broadband connections. and the long delays in satellite communications make it unsuitable for interactive applications such as video games and voice calls. Note that the data on this map should be taken with a grain of salt. It's the best data we have available, but it's based on self-reported data from ISPs, and that isn't always accurate. Remember, though internet access may seem readily available to many, that isn't always the case, either in the United States or in many countries around the world.